The door clicked shut behind him. I was still holding a pen, pretending to review the financial reports on my desk, but my body was stiff, every muscle locked in place. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Across the dimly lit office, he leaned against the doorframe, watching me. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing toned forearms, the kind that belonged to someone who worked out without obsessing over it. "You didn't answer my message," he said finally, his voice low but steady. I swallowed. I couldn't answer. I couldn't allow myself to. "It wasn't appropriate," I murmured, forcing my gaze back to the documents in front of me. But the words felt empty. Inappropriate? The whole situation had spiraled far beyond that. He chuckled softly. "And yet here we are." He was right. How did we get here? It felt like just yesterday he was another promising employee in my husband's company. Another young man trying to prove himself. But something shifted, something dangerous. The glances lasted longer, the conversations became heavier with unspoken words. Now I was trapped in my office with him, alone, feeling my world tilt beneath me. A knock on the door. I jolted upright, nearly knocking over my coffee. His eyes flashed, a mixture of amusement and challenge, but I wasn't playing this game. I composed myself, smoothing the silk of my blouse as I reached for the handle. My husband stood on the other side. "Still working?" His tone was casual, but his gaze flickered over my shoulder, past me and straight to him. The pause felt endless. My breath caught. Did he suspect something? "I was just leaving," he said behind me, his voice effortlessly smooth. He moved past me, his arm brushing mine ever so slightly, and for a split second, it felt deliberate. My husband gave him a nod, then turned to me. "You should come home. It's late." I forced a smile, hoping it masked the fire racing through my veins. "I will," I said. "In a few minutes." He hesitated, then kissed my cheek. A simple gesture, one that should have meant something. But my mind was still in the office, in the silence that followed the door shutting. And that's when I knew. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I didn't go home right away. I told myself it was because I had work to finish, emails to send, reports to review. Lies. The real reason kept replaying in my mind. The way he had looked at me before leaving, the way his arm had brushed against mine. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. This was dangerous. I had spent years building a life that was stable, respectable, successful. My husband and I were partners in every sense, at work, at home. There were no scandals, no betrayals. We were a team. So why did I feel like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down at the wreckage I was about to cause? I picked up my phone. A message from him. "Can't stop thinking about it." I didn't reply. I couldn't. Instead, I packed my things and left the office, stepping out into the cool night air. The city was still alive, headlights cutting through the streets, voices spilling out from restaurants and bars. Life was moving forward as usual. But inside me something had shifted. As I drove home, my fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. I kept replaying the moment in the office. The look in his eyes, the unspoken challenge. I should have shut it down. I should have set a boundary, drawn a line. But instead I had let it simmer. At home, my husband was already in bed, his laptop open beside him. "Everything okay?" he asked, glancing up. I hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. "Yeah. Just a long day." He didn't question it. Of course he didn't. He trusted me. That realization twisted in my chest. I climbed into bed beside him, forcing my body to relax, forcing my mind to empty. But when he reached out, running his hand lightly down my arm, my body felt nothing. I turned toward him, searching for something, desire, warmth, the spark that had once been so natural. He kissed me, slow and deliberate, but as his lips moved against mine, all I could think about was the way I had felt back in the office. "This is wrong," I told myself. "You have everything you need right here." But that was a lie too, wasn't it? Because deep down I knew I wanted more. And that made all the difference. I should have stayed away. I should have ignored his messages, kept my distance, pretended nothing had happened in that office. But instead I found myself drawn to him like gravity, like an unstoppable force pulling me toward something I shouldn't want. The next morning I walked into the office with a plan. Stay professional, keep the distance, make it clear that nothing was going to happen. It lasted less than 2 hours. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in the conference room, reviewing reports for an upcoming meeting. I could feel his presence before I even stepped inside. And when I did, his eyes found me instantly, that same unreadable expression, like he knew exactly what I was thinking. I took my seat at the head of the table, ignoring the way my pulse quickened when he shifted slightly in his chair, his knee brushing mine under the table. The meeting began. The room was filled with voices. Executives, managers, discussions about quarterly projections, but I wasn't listening. I was too aware of him. Then it happened. One of the senior executives made a passing remark, a casual joke about how hard it must be for my husband to balance business and marriage. The room chuckled politely. I smiled because that was what I was supposed to do. But beneath the table I felt his fingers brush against my thigh. A whisper of a touch. Barely there. But enough to set my entire body on fire. I didn't move. I should have. But instead I let it happen. I let myself feel it. The meeting dragged on, but I couldn't focus. My heart was pounding too loudly, my skin tingling where he had touched me. And when it finally ended, I left the conference room in a daze, heading toward my office, trying to collect my thoughts. I wasn't expecting him to follow me. The door closed behind him. Déjà vu. Only this time there was no hesitation. No pretense. What are we doing? I whispered, my back against the desk, my voice barely audible over the sound of my own breathing. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. I don't know, he admitted. But I know you feel it too. I wanted to lie. To say he was imagining things. To push him away. But I didn't. Instead he reached out, tracing a single finger down the length of my arm, slow, deliberate. My skin burned in its wake. And then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was everything we had been holding back, every stolen glance, every unspoken thought crashing into this moment. It lasted only seconds, but it was enough. When he pulled away, we were both breathless. My hands were clenched in his shirt, like I had been holding on to him for balance. I let go. This can't happen, I whispered, but the words felt hollow. He studied me for a long moment. Then finally he nodded. And just like that he was gone. But as I stood there, my lips still tingling, my heart still racing, I knew the truth. It had already happened. And there was no going back. I avoided him for the next 3 days. Or at least I tried. I buried myself in work, scheduled meetings that kept me away from the office, left early, came home late. I did everything I could to pretend that the kiss had been a mistake, a lapse in judgment, something I could erase if I just ignored it long enough. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The way his lips felt against mine. The way I had gripped his shirt without realizing it, like he was the only thing anchoring me to the ground. The way I had wanted more. And the worst part? He knew it. Because on the 4th day, when I finally let my guard down just a little, when I convinced myself that maybe I had imagined the intensity of it, he was there waiting. It happened at the company's cocktail event. My husband was making his rounds, shaking hands, discussing deals. I was doing what I always did. Standing beside him, smiling at the right moments, making small talk that didn't matter. And then across the room I saw him. He wasn't looking at me at first. He was engaged in a conversation, nodding politely to something an executive was saying. But then, as if sensing me, his eyes lifted and locked onto mine. It was subtle. A single glance. A moment too brief for anyone else to notice. But I felt it. I turned away, ignoring the way my stomach twisted. This was dangerous. But avoiding him was no longer an option. Because just when I thought I had made it through the night without another moment of weakness, I felt a presence behind me. Close. Too close. You look beautiful, he murmured. His voice was quiet, steady just for me. I inhaled sharply but didn't turn around. I couldn't. You shouldn't say things like that, I whispered. He didn't back away. If anything, I felt him step even closer. Then tell me you don't want to hear it. My fingers tightened around the stem of my champagne glass. I should have walked away. I should have ended this before it went any further. But I didn't. Because in that moment I realized something that terrified me. I wanted this. Not just the excitement, not just the thrill of the risk. But him. I wanted him. By the time the event ended, I was shaken. I barely remembered the drive home, barely registered my husband's voice as he spoke about the evening. Are you okay? He finally asked. I forced a smile. Just tired. But I wasn't tired. I was wide awake in a way I hadn't been in years. And later that night, when my phone vibrated on the nightstand and I saw his name flash across the screen, I didn't ignore it. I opened the message. You're not running away this time, are you? I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then before I could think twice, I typed back. Oh. And just like that, everything changed. I told myself I wasn't going to meet him. I had every intention of going straight home after work, of sitting across from my husband at dinner, pretending that nothing had shifted inside me. But then, at the last moment, I made the choice I knew I would regret. I sent a single message. His response came within seconds. The parking lot. 10 minutes. And just like that, I was already gone. The underground parking garage was nearly empty. Dim lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows against the concrete walls. I saw his car first. Sleek, dark, waiting. He was leaning against the hood, hands in his pockets, watching me as I approached. Not smiling. Not speaking. Just waiting. I stopped a few feet away, my heart hammering against my ribs. "This is reckless," I whispered. His eyes never left mine. "That's why you're here." I swallowed. He was right. I wasn't here to stop this. I was here because I couldn't stop it. He took a slow step forward and I felt my breath catch. "Tell me to go," he said softly. "Tell me to leave you alone and I will." I should have. Instead, I did the one thing I swore I wouldn't do. I reached for him. And then he kissed me. It wasn't hesitant this time. It wasn't something stolen in a moment of weakness. It was deliberate. His hands gripped my waist, pulling me against him, and I felt myself given completely. Heat. Desperation. Something too powerful to fight. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless, dizzy. "This is a mistake," I whispered, but even I didn't believe it anymore. He brushed his thumb against my jaw, his touch slow, teasing. "Then stop making it." I closed my eyes, my body still pressed against his. But we both knew the truth. I wasn't going to stop. I didn't go home that night. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, gripping the steering wheel, my mind a tangled mess of emotions I couldn't untangle. Guilt. Desire. Fear. Anticipation. The rational part of me screamed to stop this before it went too far. Before it destroyed everything. But another part, the one that had been starving for something more, refused to listen. Because the truth was, it had already gone too far. The next morning I walked into the office later than usual. My husband had already left, barely noticing my absence. He had kissed my cheek before walking out, his mind preoccupied with work, with meetings, with anything but me. And I was thinking about him. I barely made it through the morning. Every moment was filled with tension, waiting, knowing. I felt him before I saw him. He walked into my office without knocking, without hesitation, and closed the door behind him. The lock clicked into place. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. "This is getting out of control," I said finally. He smirked, but there was nothing playful in his eyes. Just hunger. Just certainty. "I don't think you want to be in control," he murmured. And then he was in front of me. I should have pushed him away. I should have told him to leave. I did neither. Instead, I let him press me back against my desk, his body close enough that I could feel his warmth. His breath ghosted over my skin. I tilted my chin up just a fraction. A silent invitation. And he took it. His lips found mine, but this time there was no hesitation, no lingering guilt. Just fire. I felt his hands slide along my waist, fingertips pressing into fabric, into skin. Every nerve in my body came alive. I had never felt more awake. A sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. I gasped, pushing him away as reality crashed down on me. My husband. His voice was muffled through the door. "You in there?" I met his gaze, my chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. He was already stepping back, straightening his shirt, slipping into the role of the obedient employee. I smoothed my hair, adjusted my blouse, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure my husband would hear it. I reached for the door handle, but before I opened it, he leaned in, his lips brushing my ear. "This isn't over," he whispered. And we both knew he was right. I opened the door, forcing a steady breath. My husband stood there, a coffee cup in one hand, his phone in the other. He looked at me for a moment too long. Something in his gaze sent a chill through me. Did he know? He handed me the coffee. "Thought you could use this." I took it with a grateful smile, hoping my fingers weren't shaking. "Thanks." His eyes flickered past me toward the room behind me, toward him. A split second of silence. Then my husband's attention snapped back to me. "You okay? You seem distracted lately." Distracted. That was one way to put it. I forced a small laugh, shaking my head. Just work stress. He studied me for a second, then nodded as if accepting my answer. Maybe we should take a trip. Get away for a while. My stomach twisted. The vacation? A chance to escape, to reset. A few weeks ago I would have said yes without hesitation. But now. I swallowed the guilt. That sounds nice. His phone buzzed. He glanced down at it, sighing. I have to take this. He kissed my temple absently. We'll talk later. I nodded, watching as he walked away. I felt his presence behind me before he spoke. Vacation. His voice was soft, edged with something I couldn't name. I turned to face him, gripping the coffee cup as if it could anchor me. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe it's a good idea. Something flickered in his expression, but he hid it quickly. And what about us? The word hit like a weight in my chest. There shouldn't have been any, but there was. And we both knew it. I don't know, I whispered. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. His jaw tensed. You do. Silence stretched between us. Then quietly, deliberately, he stepped closer. You're not leaving, he murmured. Not really. Even if you go on that trip, you'll still be thinking about me. I hated that he was right. I hated that I wanted him to be. That night, I lay in bed next to my husband, staring at the ceiling, my body aching with a restlessness I didn't understand. Or maybe I did. Because when my phone buzzed on the nightstand and I saw his name, I didn't hesitate. I opened the message. Meet me. I should have ignored it. Instead, I slipped out of bed. And into the night. The night air was sharp against my skin as I stepped outside. The city was quiet, but inside me, everything was loud. My pulse. My thoughts. The relentless ache in my chest. I shouldn't have come. I should have stayed in bed beside my husband, pretended my life was still whole. But the moment I saw his message, I knew I was never going to ignore it. He was waiting in his car, parked in the shadow of the office building. The headlights flickered once as I approached, and I hesitated for half a second before slipping into the passenger seat. Silence. I exhaled, gripping my coat around me. This is insane. His fingers tapped against the steering wheel, his gaze steady. Unapologetic. You don't want me to stop. The truth sat between us, heavy and undeniable. I looked away out the window at the empty street. What are we doing? A small, humorless chuckle. You tell me. I turned to face him, my heart thudding against my ribs. We can't keep. His hand was on my thigh before I could finish, his touch firm, warm, dangerous. Then tell me to stop, he murmured. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because I couldn't. Because I didn't want to. I didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was me. But in the next breath I was kissing him like I was starving for it. Like I had spent every second of every day waiting for this exact moment. Heat surged through me as his hands tangled in my hair, his body pressing against mine. Every nerve in me ignited. Somewhere in the back of my mind I knew this was reckless. Stupid. Suicidal. But I had passed the point of no return long ago. And there was no stopping now. Later I lay in his bed, tangled in sheets that didn't belong to me, in a life that wasn't mine to have. The weight of what I had done settled over me like a suffocating fog. I had crossed the final line. There was no coming back from this. I sat up, pulling the sheets around me. His voice was low, drowsy. Leaving already? I swallowed, my throat tight. I have to. He reached out, fingers trailing down my back, lazy, possessive. You don't have to do anything. I closed my eyes, absorbing the warmth of his touch, the lie hidden in his words. Because there was one thing I had to do. I had to go home. I had to look my husband in the eyes. And I had to pretend this never happened. I barely slept that night. When I finally made it home, my husband was still awake, sitting in the dim glow of the living room. His laptop was open, but he wasn't working. He was waiting. You're late, he said, his tone even. I swallowed hard, forcing a casual shrug. I lost track of time. Went for a drive to clear my head. His gaze lingered on me, unreadable. In your work clothes? I looked down. Damn it. The blouse was wrinkled, the buttons misaligned from how quickly I had dressed. How could I be so careless? I forced a small laugh, brushing past him toward the kitchen. You're overanalyzing. I felt his stare on my back, heavy, pressing. Am I? I gripped the counter, my breath uneven. He knows. Maybe not everything, but enough. I turned to face him, my pulse hammering. Are we really doing this? Interrogations now? His jaw clenched, but he said nothing. The silence stretched between us, thick, suffocating. Finally, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. I just feel like I don't know you lately. I felt the sharp sting of those words because he was right. He didn't know me anymore. And the worst part? I didn't know myself either. The next day at work, I told myself I was going to end it. I repeated it like a mantra. This has to stop. But the second I saw him, I knew I was lying to myself. He was waiting for me in my office, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I shut the door behind me, exhaling sharply. We can't do this anymore. He studied me for a long moment. Then slowly he shook his head. Yes, we can. I swallowed, my hands curling into fists at my sides. No, we can't. My husband. You don't love him, he cut in, his voice calm, certain. I opened my mouth to argue. Nothing came out. Because deep down, in the quiet part of my mind I never let myself listen to, I knew. I had already chosen. That night I didn't sneak away. I didn't make excuses. I sat across from my husband at the dinner table, feeling the weight of every lie I had told. I stared at my plate, pushing food around, my appetite long gone. Then, before I could stop myself, I looked up and said the words that would change everything. I need to tell you something. My husband put his fork down. The sound of metal against porcelain seemed deafening in the silence between us. He looked at me, brows furrowed slightly, waiting. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head. I had imagined different ways it could play out. Anger, disbelief, maybe even desperate forgiveness. But the one thing I hadn't imagined was how terrifying it would feel to finally say the words out loud. I've been lying to you. His expression didn't change, but his fingers curled into fists on the table. I forced myself to meet his eyes. No more hiding. No more pretending. There's someone else. The words hung in the air like smoke. Slowly, painfully, realization dawned in his gaze. His breath left him in a slow exhale. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't demand an explanation. He just sat there, staring at me like he was trying to recognize the woman sitting in front of him. How long? His voice was quiet, restrained. I swallowed hard. Long enough. His jaw clenched, but still, no outburst. Only silence. Only the unbearable weight of what I had done. You love him? The question hit like a punch. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him this was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that I regretted everything. But that would be another lie. And I was done lying. So I whispered the truth. Yes. I left that night. I packed a bag in silence, my fingers numb, my chest hollow. My husband didn't try to stop me. He just watched. Not with hatred. Not with rage. With something far worse. Disappointment. I turned at the door, gripping the handle. I never meant to hurt you. A bitter smile crossed his lips. Then maybe you shouldn't have married me. I closed my eyes, absorbing the weight of his words. And then I walked away. He was waiting for me. Standing outside his apartment, hands in his pockets, eyes dark with something unreadable. I hesitated, standing on the threshold of what was now my new life. You're really here, he said quietly, as if he had expected me to change my mind at the last second. I took a slow breath. Yeah. Something flickered in his gaze. Relief, victory, maybe even something close to love. He reached for me, pulling me into his arms. And for the first time in a long time I felt something real. No more secrets. No more guilt. Just the choice I had made. And the consequences that would follow.